Hi, I'm Cameron Cody, product manager here with DewEze, and I got Stuart Rose, National Sales Promotions Coordinator. And we got a small video today we want to talk to you guys. Stuart and I, we talked to many customers throughout the entire Midwest and different regions. And one of the big things that is on a lot of guys' minds is the drought that not only we faced this summer, but also going into last year. And Stuart, what are some of the things that guys are seeing as far as some of the hay that they're having to buy this year?
Well, that's actually one of the things I want to talk a great deal about today is the vast majority of all the hay that we're going to have work with this year is going to be of mediocre quality or maybe even reasonable quality, but for poor feeding characteristics. So what I mean by that is if you try to unroll it, it's just not going to go very far. It's really loose. It doesn't have any binding characteristic. And so it's going to be just a little bit of a challenge. And then, you know, even with that, the quality of some of it is going to be a stock material. And so, you know, that's going to be just harder to feed. So we come out here to the field, and what we've got here, this is actually some prairie hay that was baled this year. The reality is this is as good a hay as I'm going to have this year, but the feed characteristic is going to be similar to what we talked about earlier. The hay was short. It was baled really dry, it's really fluffy, and I think where we're going to find is once we get going here, all of the feed quality is fine, it's just not going to go very far. So the situation with that kind of comes down to, you know, how many bales do you actually have to put out to be able to get enough space for all the cows to eat? And this example maybe isn't the best because there's not very many cows out here, and they're going to have plenty of space, but the downside to that is they have plenty of space, and come tonight, these cows are going to be bedded down in it. There's just no doubt that they will. So it may be such a situation where you've got, let's say you got 100 cows. Well, maybe you got to put out 5 bales to give them cows all someplace to eat without the competition of one another. But that may turn out to be more hay than they actually need, and they're going to bed down in it. And the first time they lay in it and defecate in it, then that's just going to be waste. And this waste is just something that we're just not going to be able to tolerate this year. So we're going to show this a minute. We're going to unroll this bale. We're going to measure it and just see what this looks like. So we're going to have Cameron take off with this bale. You know, if you've fed a lot of hay, you know every bale kind of has its own characteristic, and you can kind of see exactly what I was trying to display earlier. This hay is really short and it's really dry, and you know, we're just going to have these big piles, and of course, just like this cow is doing right here, she's just going to try to pile on in, and come tonight, you know, what they don't eat, they're going to lay on. So you know, this is kind of what we're going to talk about. This is really good hay, but it's the best I guess I should say this is the best I'm going to have this year, so I certainly don't want to waste it. So as Cameron goes to unroll this bale, kind of brings you back to the point of what we were talking about earlier and exactly what I wanted to show you. There isn't very many cows in this group, so maybe that isn't actually the best example, but what we wanted to show you is exactly the way this bale unrolled. It is very good hay, and it's as good as I'm going to have this year, but the characteristics is just what we discussed earlier, is it's thin and it's dry, and kind of as you can see, you know, this first mat comes off and it's a 15-inch mat, and so, you know, kind of where we're going to end up having to put out way more hay to say feed 100 head of cows. We might have to put out, say, 5 bales just to get everybody enough place to eat. Right. That's essentially over.
With that dry hay, whenever you have something like this, that first couple revolutions, I mean, you start seeing this layers come off, and then when you get down there, it's just about done.
So, you know, you end up kind of almost overfeeding the cows, putting out more hay than you actually need. So what we'll find is when we come back here tonight, they're going to be bedded down in this because they won't clean it all up. But that's how much hay we had actually put out. So make sure that the young ones or the more timid ones had some place to eat. So we measured this bale. This was about a 1,300-pound bale.
180 feet.
So we're going to take that measurement. We're going to compare what we're going to do with the S3 on some hay that's not of near this quality, and just see how far we can go.
Yep. So Stuart, this isn't near the bale that what we just showed with our bale bed. What are we looking at here? This looks a little bit older and looks like it's got a little bit of rot here on the bottom.
Yeah, this is actually a 3.5 coming 4-year-old prairie hay. The quality of the hay actually isn't that bad. It's just a simple fact that it's been sitting around. The bottom's basically rotted off of it. There's a fair amount of decay on the bottom side. And so, you know, we've seen this, and the situation for a year like this is every old bale sitting in the fence row across the country is going to get fed up. But then it comes to like how to feed it and how am I going to get it dispersed. It's good hay, I don't want to waste it, and I can't afford to waste it this year. Yeah. So that's why we're going to kind of show you here with the S3.
And if you were to go unroll this with the bale bed, like we had a 15-inch mat there, this would probably be how big? Like about a 2-foot mat maybe?
Probably at least a 2 foot. You know, everything, since we've lost the contiguousness of the bale out around, everything that's not connected is going to come off in that first wrap. And so that's where we're going to find if the machine's going to help us control that and get it distributed in the way we want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about tractors a minute. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, so one thing I noticed, I mean, you don't have a really high horsepower tractor here that you're going to be using this machine with, so is that one of the things that's nice about a super slicer?
Yeah, I actually think so. You know, this is a 1974 Case 870. Nothing special about this tractor. It's a 74 PTO, but you know, many of you out there have much newer, some smaller compact tractors. You know, anywhere that 50 horsepower category really runs this tractor nicely, or the tractor runs the S3 very nicely.
Yeah. Bigger tractor will work, obviously, and if you have a cab, it's even better, you're out of the wind, but something like this, you don't need a big tractor to make this thing work.
No, I actually prefer a smaller tractor. Anywhere in that, say, 50, 60 horsepower range, works beautiful.
Yeah. So, Stuart, we're here, I guess you could say, on the business end of the slicer here on the discharge side. A lot of guys are feeding failed milo stalks, or feeding corn stalks or soybean residue that got baled up, and whenever you cut the net wrap off on that, that's really going to explode. And a slicer is a good way to help you feed some of that out. Is there anything that guys need to look at as far as setting the discharge height over here when it comes to feeding that?
Yeah, you're right, Cameron. That is a situation that we're going to be in. And so if you buy a Super Slicer 2, let's say a few years old, or even the S3, the newer models, the gate setting, the factory gate setting, so I'm talking about the distance or the opening space for the discharge, was going to be at about 3 inches. This has actually been opened up to closer to 9. So I'm talking from the bottom of the sickle to the floor is closer to 9 inches. To get this really light, fluffy stuff, I actually recommend opening it up all the way. And so there's a number of those machines that have been out. We've been making this thing since the late 80s, early 90s. You know, even if you've got one and you're having trouble getting it set, the Super Slicer 2 is from mechanical drive. If you need a little issue or having a little issue with it and need some help getting it set or timed, to be happy to work with you on that. Or if you have some thoughts on or questions as it relates to getting this gate setting to where you need it on an S3, again, you're welcome to call us and we'd be happy to visit with you and help you through that.
Yep. So with that being said, are we ready to go try feeding this bale out?
Let's go feed us out and see how it happens.
So Stuart went ahead and he cut the net wrap off, and you can see here this bottom of this bale is just pretty well rotted. And you come over here on the side view, we got about a 2-foot mat here that's on the bottom of this slicer that we're going to go ahead and feed out. And with that, you see on the ground, like if you're trying to feed this in a ring or a bunk, I mean, that stuff's just going to be there in that ring until you finally move the ring to another location, and it just decomposes over time. But Stuart's going to go ahead and he's going to feed this bale out. And then we're going to take a measuring wheel. I'm going to measure that and compare it compared to our bale that we unrolled with our bale bed and see what that difference is.
So I believe here with these two windrows, you can kind of see what we were trying to accomplish here. We had hay, then the pictures you saw previously, that's just a little bit unmanageable as it relates to unrolling or possibly even feeding it in a bunk with that degradation on the side, inside and on the bottom. So you can see we've actually gone 400 plus feet here with these two bales. Unrolled them significantly farther than we would have with your traditional feeding method. So again, this S3 is allowing me to stretch my hay much farther than I was going to, save hay, and on a year like this is exactly what we need.
So Stuart, we're standing here in front of one of your bale rings, and you know, that's sometimes what a lot of guys got to feed with. And as you can see, we got a pile of hay here and waste, and that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about as far as using a slicer and trying to minimize some of that waste, right?
Yeah, and I hope through this video today we've maybe kind of answered some questions or give y'all something to think about or some options. And And you know, there's lots of hay feeders on the market, round bale, square, portable, and so forth. But you know, I've seen a lot of them, and at the end of the day, you're always having to move them, and if you don't, you end up with this. And you know, that degraded stuff that we saw, that's going to pile up in the bottom of the feeder. So I just believe if you're feeding out on a pasture or you're feeding out on stalks, as long as you can keep that stuff spread out, you just don't end up with this waste. You don't end up with the erosion, especially on highly erodible soils, and it's just a cleaner environment for your cattle altogether.
Yeah. So in summary, I guess to wrap up on our conversation, I mean, a bale bed, it works great for a lot of people, and the drought that everybody's experiencing and the type of hay that they're having to feed is different than what a normal year would produce.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
this slicer, what we demonstrated today, is just another way or another opportunity that a guy could look at as far as trying to save down on some of that hay wastage.
Yeah, you know, that's actually right. And we've got the S3 in the background. And just one other thing that I thought about real quick here is, you know, this is a side load, and we've been asked over the years about a rear load machine. And you know, I've seen some of those rear load machines, but you know, when we see that there's no bottom left anymore, those rear loads, as they raise up and tip over, sometimes that stuff all around the outside just falls in the ground, and then you've got another pile. And so that's another reason that we've actually stayed with the design we've had for all these years. It's been consistent and dependable.
Yeah. If you want to talk to a salesman, reach out to us at DewEze.com. You may be trying to find some of these units out in the country, and they'll be more than happy to find a local dealer that can get you one of these units in your hands.